Commander Vextel limped into the vast chamber, her 6 legs clicking against the polished metal floor. The scars across her black shell told stories of 100 battles, but none had marked her as deeply as the war against humanity. Her compound, eyes swept across the semicircle of alien delegates waiting in judgment. The Zephyrian ambassador's blue skin shimmered with curiosity. The crystalline Karathi representative pulsed with faint light. Even the massive Gorlan warchief leaned forward, his tusks gleaming under the chamber's harsh illumination. 12 species, all united in their need to understand the impossible. State your designation for the record, commanded High Arbiter Vexlon, his tentacles writhing with official authority. No, Vextel, 3rd Claw Division, Hegemony Expeditionary. Fleet, she replied. Her voice translated into the chamber's common tongue by the neural interface grafted behind her primary eye cluster. Veteran of 47 planetary conquests before the human conflict. The silence stretched like a taut cable ready to snap. Everyone knew why she was here. The hegemony had been the galaxy's dominant military force for 3 centuries. They had crushed rebellions, annexed systems, and brought order to chaos across 10,000 worlds. Till they met humanity. You want to know about the humans? Vextel clicked, her mandibles twitching with what might have been fear or respect. You want to understand how we lost a war we should have won in days? The Zephyrian delegate's skin flushed deeper blue. The tactical reports make no sense. Your forces outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. Your technology was superior in every measurable way. Vextel's laugh was a harsh, chittering sound. Numbers, technology. We thought those were the only variables that mattered in warfare. Humans taught us there were others we had never considered. She activated a holographic display with a gesture, showing the star system where it all began. A small yellow sun with several planets, the 3rd one marked in red. It began on Nexus 7, a human mining colony on the edge of their territory. Intelligence suggested it was lightly defended, perfect for demonstrating our superiority, before moving on to their core worlds. Her eyes fixed on the recording device floating silently above the tribunal. We expected easy conquest. Instead, we met Captain Daeho Kim and his garrison. The Karathi representative's crystalline form pulsed brighter. A single human officer concerned the entire 3rd Claw Division. Kim commanded the 47th Colonial Defense Regiment. 300 human soldiers armed with primitive kinetic weapons and basic energy shields. Our invasion force carried 10,000 elite warriors, plasma artillery, and orbital bombardment platforms. Vextel's shell darkened with remembered shame. By every military doctrine in the galaxy, Kim should have surrendered the moment our ships appeared in orbit. The chamber's environmental systems hummed softly as the delegates absorbed this information. The Gorlan warchief grunted with what might have been amusement. Instead, Vextel continued, Kim sent a single message to our flagship. 3 words? In their ancient Earth language, transmitted on all frequencies, so every ship in our fleet could hear it. What did this message say? Asked High Arbiter Dexlon. Vextel's translator crackled as she repeated the phrase that had haunted her dreams. For years, come and take it. The silence that followed was deafening. Several delegates exchanged glances of confusion. The concept was alien to most spacefaring civilizations. When faced with overwhelming force, surrender was logical. Negotiation was sensible. Defiance unto death was madness. We thought it was bravado, Vextel admitted, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Empty posturing from a species too primitive to understand the reality of their situation. Our psychological warfare specialists assured us that a simple demonstration of our firepower would break their resolve. She manipulated the hologram, zooming in on the colony's main settlement. Nexus 7 was built into a series of mining platforms connected by bridges and tunnels. Logical defensive positions, but nothing our forces couldn't overwhelm with coordinated assault. The Zephyrian delegate leaned forward. What was your opening strategy? Standard intimidation protocol? We positioned our dreadnoughts in low orbit and began charging our main batteries. The energy signatures alone should have terrified them into submission. Instead, Kim's response was to activate the colony's mining lasers and target our ships. A ripple of disbelief passed through the chamber. Mining equipment against military vessels was like throwing stones at armored giants. The lasers couldn't penetrate our shields, of course. But that wasn't the point. Kim was sending a message. To his people and ours. No surrender, no retreat. No quarter asked or given. Vextal's mandibles clicked rapidly with agitation. We were wrong about everything. Completely, catastrophically wrong. The assault began at dawn. Vextal's voice carried a tremor that her mechanical translator couldn't quite mask. The assembled delegates noticed how her chitinous fingers scraped against the metal table as she spoke. Our plasma cannons lit up the morning sky like artificial suns. The outer defensive walls of Nexus 7 melted like ice under our bombardment. 30 minutes of concentrated fire reduced their fortifications to slag and twisted metal.
Ow.
She paused, her compound eyes reflecting the chamber's harsh lighting. We advanced, expecting to find corpses and maybe a few survivors begging for mercy. The Karathi delegates' crystal form pulsed with anticipation. Surely such devastating firepower broke their resistance. Vextal's laugh was bitter. We moved through the smoking ruins in standard formation. My squad was advancing toward. Had been their command bunker when we heard it. A rhythmic tapping sound coming from beneath a collapsed wall. She activated her holographic display, showing the twisted wreckage of the defensive position. My warriors used plasma cutters to clear the debris. What we found underneath changed everything I thought I knew about warfare. The chamber fell, silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Sergeant Bjorn Park, both legs crushed beneath a support beam that weighed 3 tons. Her left arm was twisted at an impossible angle. Blood covered half her face where shrapnel had torn. Through her helmet, Vextal's mandibles clicked with what might have been respect. She was still firing at us with a primitive kinetic rifle, using her one good arm to work the bolt action. The Zephyrian ambassador's blue skin flickered with confusion. Impossible. No being could maintain combat effectiveness with such injuries. That's what we thought too. My squad leader, Kekstar, approached her position. Standard protocol was to secure wounded enemies for interrogation. Park looked up at him through that cracked helmet and smiled. Vextal's voice dropped to almost a whisper. She had strapped explosive charges to her chest while buried under the rubble. It's jury-rigged from mining equipment and connected to a dead man's switch. The massive Gorlan war chief shifted uncomfortably. Even his species, known for their ferocity, looked disturbed. The explosion took out Kekstar and 4 other warriors instantly. Park died laughing, not screaming in pain or begging for mercy. Laughing like she'd just played the best joke in the galaxy. Vextal's exoskeleton darkened with stress patterns. That was our first real introduction to human warfare doctrine. She manipulated the hologram, showing the colony's central command structure. We pushed deeper into the settlement, expecting the Park incident to be an anomaly. Individual madness, not tactical thinking. We were wrong about that too. The display zoomed in on a fortified communications center built into the mining platform's core. Lieutenant Wu Zhenli commanded the colony's tactical operations. When we breached his position, we found something that violated every understanding of military logic. High Arbiter Vexlon leaned forward. Li had been shot 17 times by our energy weapons. Burns covered 60% of his body. He should have been dead 3 times over. Vextal's translator crackled with static as her emotional state interfered with the neural interface. Instead, he was standing at a tactical display, coordinating defensive positions across the entire colony. She highlighted specific areas on the hologram. He was using his own blood as a marking system, dipping his fingers into his wounds and painting targets on the screen. Each bloody fingerprint represented one of our advanced squads. He had tracked our movements through the settlement with precision that would have impressed our best strategists. Korathi representative's light pulsed rapidly with agitation. How could a mortally wounded being maintain such tactical awareness? That's what my interrogation specialist wanted to know. We managed to corner Li in the command center, cutting off his escape routes. Standard procedure was to capture high-value targets alive for intelligence extraction. Mandibles. clicked with remembered frustration. Lee looked at us with eyes that should have been clouded with pain and death. Instead, they were calculating, planning. She paused, gathering herself before continuing. He activated something on his control panel, single button press that sent our entire fleet's positioning data to human high command. Every ship location, every troop movement, every tactical deployment. All transmitted in the seconds before we could stop him. The chamber erupted in surprised chittering and electronic harmonics from various species. The strategic implications were staggering. Then Lee spoke directly to us. No translator needed because he'd learned our language during the siege. He said, "Thank you for the tactical demonstration. My people will learn from your mistakes." Vextal's voice carried genuine admiration mixed with horror. He died with his hand still on that transmission button, ensuring the data upload was complete. The Zephyrian delegate's skin had turned almost purple with shock. 2 incidents of tactical suicide. Surely this represented the extent of their fanatical resistance. Vextal's compound eyes fixed on each tribunal member in turn. We hadn't even reached the communications bunker yet. Private Soyoung Han was waiting for us there, and she would teach us that human ingenuity in warfare knows no bounds. Nexus to 7, we thought we understood human desperation. Vextal's exoskeleton shifted to darker patterns as she recalled the next phase of the war. The tribunal waited in tense silence as she prepared to describe what military historians would later call the most psychologically devastating siege in galactic history. Station Prometheus orbited a gas giant in the Kepler system, a research facility that looked harmless enough from space. Just another human outpost conducting scientific studies on exotic matter and gravitational anomalies. Intelligence reports indicated minimal defensive capabilities and a skeleton crew of researchers.
Ow.
The station held only 50 humans total. Vextal continued, her mandibles clicking with nervous energy. Led by Dr. Hyan Wu Choi, their chief scientist, and defended by Commander Era Yoon with her security team of 12 soldiers. Our siege force numbered 5,000 elite warriors, aboard 15 assault cruisers. The Karathi representative pulsed with confusion. Such overwhelming numbers should have guaranteed swift victory. The mathematics were simple, or so we believed. Vextal activated her holographic display, showing the station's cylindrical structure rotating slowly against the backdrop of the gas giant's swirling storms. Standard siege doctrine called for a 48-hour blockade, followed by boarding assault. We expected surrender within the first day. She zoomed in on the station's docking bays and external features. Dr. Choi's response to our ultimatum was to invite us aboard for what he called a scientific demonstration of human creativity under pressure. Commander Yoon added that they would be honored to show us their latest research findings. The Zephyrian delegate's skin flickered with unease. They invited invasion? We interpreted it as delusional bravado from academics facing military reality. My battle group commander, General Dekvar, decided to demonstrate the futility of resistance with a precision strike on their communications array. Vextal's voice carried dark amusement. The humans thanked us for eliminating their need to maintain outside contact and sealed all airlocks. The siege began with textbook efficiency. Hegemony forces surrounded the station at optimal firing positions, while assault teams prepared for boarding operations. The first week passed according to standard tactical projections. Then the humans began their real work. Within the first week, they had turned the station's recycling systems into chemical weapons factories. Vextal explained, her translator struggling with the technical terminology. Dr. Choi somehow synthesized compounds that ate through our armor like acid through paper. The station's water recycling plant became a laboratory for creating airborne toxins that targeted our respiratory systems. She manipulated the hologram to show the station's internal layout. Commander Yoon's people had mapped every ventilation shaft, maintenance tunnel, and service corridor. They moved through the station like ghosts, appearing where we least expected them. The massive Gorlan war chief grunted with professional interest. Guerrilla tactics, primitive, but effective in enclosed spaces. More than effective, they hunted us like predators stalking prey. Vextal's compound eyes reflected the holographic light as she recalled the psychological warfare that followed. The station's internal sensors recorded everything. Every death, every scream, every moment of terror our soldiers experienced. High Arbiter Vexlon's tentacles writhed with disturbance. They used surveillance for tactical advantage. They used it for something far worse. The humans recorded the dying screams of our warriors and broadcast them through the station's communication system on a continuous loop, mixed with human voices whispering tactical information and psychological taunts in our own language. Vextal's shell patterns darkened further. My soldiers began reporting hallucinations, phantom voices calling their names, the sound of their own deaths echoing through the corridors. The chamber's environmental system seemed to hum louder in the uncomfortable silence that followed. But the humans weren't content with just killing us. They studied us, she highlighted specific sections of the station on her display. Dr. Choi had converted the biology labs into forensic analysis centers. Every warrior we lost became a research subject. They learned our anatomy, our weaknesses, our psychological breaking points. The Karathi delegates' crystalline form pulsed with horror. They experimented on the dead. They experimented on the living too. Communications officer Young-Soo Nam had been severely wounded during our third boarding attempt. Burns across his entire torso, internal injuries that should have killed him within hours. Vextal's voice dropped to almost a whisper. He volunteered to be bait. She showed a tactical overlay of the station's central hub where the incident occurred. Nam dragged himself to the main communications array, broadcasting distress signals that made it sound like the humans were finally ready to surrender. He begged for medical assistance, pleaded for evacuation, painted a picture of broken defenders ready to give up. Zephyrian ambassador leaned forward. A trap? The most sophisticated ambush I've ever witnessed. While Nam kept our attention with his performance, Commander Yoon's team prepared a killing field in the docking bay. They had turned the station's gravity generators into weapons, creating zones of crushing force and weightlessness that disoriented. Our assault teams? Vextal's mandibles clicked rapidly as she relived the memory. When we moved to secure Nam, he smiled and activated charges throughout the communications section. The explosion not only killed him and 30 of our warriors, but also sent a focused electromagnetic pulse that disabled our boarding ship's navigation systems. The siege dragged on for 93 standard days. Each day brought new horrors as the humans turned their scientific knowledge into instruments of warfare. The station became a maze of death traps, psychological warfare, and impossible tactical challenges. When we finally breached the central chamber, Vextal concluded, we found Dr. Choi and Commander Yoon standing calmly beside the station's main reactor. They had converted it into a massive antimatter bomb capable of destroying everything within 1,000 kilometers. The tribunal sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. They died taking 3 of our capital ships with them. 5,000 crew members vaporized in an instant. But before the explosion, Dr. Choi transmitted all their research data to Human Military Command. Everything they had learned about us, everything they had discovered about psychological warfare, every innovation they had created during the siege. Vextal's voice carried a mixture of respect and terror. Station Prometheus wasn't just a research facility, it was a laboratory for studying us, and we were the test subjects. The true horror began when we learned about Project Scorched Earth. Vextal's exoskeleton darkened with stress patterns that made the tribunal members shift uncomfortably in their seats. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop as she prepared to describe humanity's most devastating strategic deception. After Station Prometheus, our high command decided to end the war with overwhelming force. No more sieges, no more tactical games. We would strike at the heart of human civilization and crush their will to resist. Her compound eyes reflected. The holographic display as Earth appeared in miniature above the table. Fleet Admiral Sujin Park had been preparing for our arrival for months. The Karathi delegates' crystalline form pulsed with curiosity. Surely their homeworld represented their strongest defensive position? Vextal's laugh was harsh and bitter. That's exactly what Park wanted us to believe. Intelligence reports showed massive military buildups in every major city. Orbital defense platforms bristling with weapons, transport ships moving constantly. Between Earth and their outer colonies, apparently bringing reinforcements home for the final battle, she manipulated the hologram to show the hegemony's massive invasion fleet assembling at the edge of the solar system. 12,000 ships of every class, from nimble destroyers to planet-cracking dreadnoughts. It's the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. What we didn't know was that those transport ships weren't bringing soldiers to Earth. They were evacuating civilians away from it. Vextel's mandibles clicked with what might have been admiration. Park had secretly moved Earth's entire population to hidden colonies in distant star systems. The cities we saw defending themselves were populated entirely by volunteers who knew they were going to die. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft electronic humming of recording devices. The implications were staggering. When our main battle fleet arrived at their homeworld, we found cities full of soldiers like Colonel Dong Hein Shin defending. Seoul and Major Haiwan Ku commanding the Pacific Defense Grid. They fought brilliantly, desperately, convincingly. Vextel's voice carried genuine respect mixed with horror. Every battle plan they executed was textbook perfect. Position was expertly coordinated. We believed we had trapped their entire military leadership on one planet. She stood, her 6 legs carrying her in an agitated circle around the witness platform. We were the ones trapped. The holographic Earth rotated slowly, showing the major population centers where the final battles raged. The siege of Earth lasted 72 hours. Our forces made steady progress against what appeared to be desperate, but ultimately futile resistance. Colonel Shin's defense of Seoul was a masterpiece of urban warfare. His soldiers held every street, every building, every subway tunnel against overwhelming odds. The Zephyrian ambassador's skin flickered with confusion. If they were doomed, why fight so convincingly? Because the performance had to be perfect. Every human soldier on Earth knew their role in the greatest deception in military history. Vextel's exoskeleton plates shifted with remembered tension. Captain Jinwoo led the final defense of Seoul, broadcasting tactical data while his city burned around him. His communications weren't just coordinating local resistance, were feeding our fleet false information about human defensive capabilities. She highlighted specific battle zones on the holographic display. Lieutenant Colonel Mi Young-soo coordinated global resistance from a bunker beneath the ruins of Busan. Her transmissions convinced us that Earth's government was still functioning, still directing their war effort from hidden command centers. We positioned our entire fleet to prevent any escape attempts. The massive Gorlan war chief leaned forward with professional interest. Standard containment strategy? Logical positioning. Logical, yes. It's exactly what the humans wanted us to. Do Vextels. A voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Earth itself had been weaponized. Every building in every city was rigged with thermonuclear charges. The planet's crust had been seeded with antimatter devices that would trigger in sequence. Even their atmosphere had been turned into a weapon. She manipulated the hologram too. Show cross-sections of Earth's major cities. Dr. Choi's research from Station Prometheus had been implemented on a planetary scale. The atmosphere had been seeded with engineered viruses targeting our respiratory systems. Nanoscale weapons that would activate when our ships entered the upper atmosphere. High Arbiter that Slan's tentacles writhed with disbelief. They poisoned their own planet's air. They did more than that. The humans had militarized their weather systems using orbital manipulation platforms disguised as communication satellites. Artificial storms that generated electromagnetic pulses powerful enough to disable our ship systems. Hurricane force. Winds carrying metallic particles that turned into kinetic weapons against our hulls. The chamber's environmental systems seemed to strain under the weight of the revelations. Several delegates appeared physically ill at the scope of human strategic thinking. The end came during what we thought was our final victory. Captain O's last transmission from Seoul reported that human resistance was collapsing. Colonel Shin, BROAD, CAST surrender codes from his command bunker. Lieutenant Colonel SEO's final message indicated that Earth's government was ready to negotiate unconditional surrender. Vextel's compound eyes fixed on each tribunal member in turn. Our fleet. moved into optimal bombardment positions to accept their surrender. 12,000 ships in perfect formation around their homeworld, close enough to prevent any escape attempts, far enough to avoid defensive fire from the surface. She paused, her translator crackling with emotional interference. That's when Admiral Park revealed the true purpose of Project Scorched Earth, a single transmission on all frequencies, broadcast throughout the galaxy so every species would witness what happened next. The holographic Earth began to pulse with internal light, showing the activation sequence of the planetary weapon. Park's message was simple. This is Admiral Sujin Park of the Human Defense Force. Earth dies today, and it takes our enemies with it. Remember this moment, because it shows what happens when you threaten our families. The chamber erupted in shock, chittering in electronic harmonics as the delegates realized what they were seeing. When Earth detonated, it took our entire invasion fleet with it. 12,000 ships and 4 million soldiers vaporized in an expanding sphere of antimatter fire that could be seen from 3 star systems away. Vextel's voice carried a mixture of terror and awe. The humans had sacrificed their birth world to eliminate half our military in a single day. But the message wasn't about military tactics or strategic thinking. It was about human psychology. They would rather destroy everything they held sacred than let us take it from them. The tribunal sat in stunned silence as the implications of humanity's ultimate gambit settled into their understanding. Earth's destruction hadn't been a desperate last stand. It had been a calculated, strategic move designed to break the hegemony's will to continue the war. That's when we realized we weren't fighting soldiers or even a military. We were fighting an entire species that viewed annihilation as preferable to surrender. The war ended not because we defeated them, but because we begged for mercy. Vextel's voice was hollow, stripped of the military pride that had once defined her species. The tribunal members leaned forward as she prepared to deliver the most humiliating confession in hegemony history. 3 days after Earth's destruction, our remaining fleet commanders received an unprecedented transmission. It came from deep space, from coordinates that showed nothing on our sensors. She activated her holographic display one final time, showing a seemingly empty region of asteroid fields. General Taeyang Yang responded to our surrender request from a hidden fortress we never knew existed. The Karathi delegates' crystalline form pulsed with confusion. The humans still had operational command structures after losing their homeworld. Vextel's mandibles clicked with bitter laughter. Yang had been planning this strategy for decades. While we focused on Earth as humanity's center of power, he had been building a shadow government in mobile stations throughout the galaxy. Hidden bases in asteroid belts, underground facilities on dead worlds, command ships disguised as cargo freighters. She manipulated the display to show a vast network of concealed installations spread across multiple star systems. The humans we fought on Earth weren't their military leadership. They were volunteers, heroes who chose to die maintaining the illusion that we had cornered their government. The real human command structure was always beyond our reach. The chamber's environmental systems hummed softly as the delegates absorbed this revelation. The massive Gorlan war chief shifted uncomfortably, his tusks reflecting the holographic light. Yang's message was transmitted simultaneously to every surviving hegemony ship. Every military installation, every government facility throughout our empire. Vextel's exoskeleton darkened with remembered shame. He spoke in perfect hegemony standard, using formal diplomatic protocols that showed he understood our culture better than most of our own citizens. High Arbiter Vextel's tentacles writhed with nervous energy. What were his terms? That's what made it so terrifying. Yang didn't demand territory, reparations, or political concessions. He simply stated that humanity was prepared to accept our unconditional surrender and would consider terms for coexistence. Vextel's voice carried a tremor of genuine fear. He thanked us for the educational experience and invited our diplomatic corps to discuss the future of galactic civilization. The Zephyrian ambassador's skin flickered with disbelief. They offered negotiations. After destroying their own homeworld, Yang explained that Earth's sacrifice had served 2 purposes. First, to eliminate our primary invasion force and break our military capability. Second, to demonstrate that humans could not be conquered through conventional warfare. Vextel stood and began pacing again, her agitation evident. He casually mentioned that 17 other human worlds had been prepared for similar tactics if necessary. The tribunal members exchanged glances of horror. The implications were staggering. Colonel Du Yan Lim now leads the human reconstruction effort. Their new settlements are rising from the asteroid fields where Yang's hidden bases operated. Mobile cities that can relocate at a moment's notice, making them impossible to target with traditional siege warfare. She highlighted several construction sites on her display. Each new colony is designed as both civilian habitat and military fortress. The holographic display showed massive space stations emerging from asteroid mining operations, their civilian sections seamlessly integrated with weapon systems and defensive platforms. Dr. Yoonji Choi, no relation to the hero who died at Prometheus, heads their new weapons development program. The research data from every battle, every siege, every tactical encounter has been compiled into what they call the Galactic Warfare Archive. Vextel's compound eyes reflected the cold light of the display. They speak of peace, but we know what they're capable of. She manipulated the hologram to show human diplomatic missions spreading throughout the galaxy. They've established embassies on 47 worlds, trade agreements with 12 major powers, and mutual defense pacts with species we've never even heard of. Their diplomats smile and speak of cooperation, while their engineers study our technologies, and their strategists map our defensive positions. The massive Gorlon war chief grunted with professional respect. Sound military doctrine. Prepare for the next conflict while maintaining peaceful facades. That's exactly what makes them so terrifying. Vextel faced the tribunal directly, her exoskeleton patterns shifting to display maximum stress. You ask why we fear a ceasefire with the humans? 'Cause Captain Byung-ho Jang smiled when he accepted our surrender. Not the grim satisfaction of victory, but genuine pleasure, as if we had given him the perfect gift. She activated a recording device, playing back the surrender ceremony that had taken place on a neutral space station. The human officer's voice was warm, almost friendly. As he accepted the hegemony's capitulation, Colonel Suman Kim thanked us for what she called the educational experience. She said that fighting us had taught humanity valuable lessons about galactic warfare that they would never forget. Vextel's translator crackled with emotional interference. Every human we've encountered since treats warfare not as a necessary evil, but as an art form they've perfected. The recording continued, showing human officers taking detailed notes during the surrender proceedings, asking technical questions about hegemony tactics and equipment with the enthusiasm of students learning from master teachers. They documented everything. Our ship designs, our tactical formations, our command structures, our psychological profiles. Vextel's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They turned our surrender into a research opportunity. Hi, Arbiter, Vexelon leaned forward. What is your assessment of current human capabilities? We learned too late that humans don't just fight wars, they become war itself. Every man, woman, and child among them understands that existence is battle, and they've turned that understanding into their greatest weapon. Vextel's mandibles clicked rapidly with agitation. Their children learn tactical thinking as naturally as mathematics. Their civilians can improvise weapons from household items. Their poets write about strategy, and their musicians compose battle hymns. The chamber fell silent as the delegates contemplated a species where the line between civilian and military had been completely erased. They call it total war, but we know the truth. For humans, there is no difference between total war and simply being human. Vextel gathered her testimony files with deliberate precision. That is why we will never fight them again. That is why no one should. She paused at the chamber's exit, turning back to face the tribunal one final time. I have given you the truth. Do with it what you will, but remember this warning. Somewhere in this galaxy, Admiral Junho Park is building new fleets with technologies we help them develop. He has learned from every mistake we forced them to make. The recording devices captured her final words as she limped toward the chamber doors. The humans are no longer the species we first encountered. We created something far more dangerous. We created humanity's next evolution, and they will never forget the lessons we taught them. The tribunal sat in stunned silence as Vextal disappeared into the corridor, leaving behind only the holographic displays showing human expansion across the galaxy and the growing network of alliances that had made them the most feared diplomatic power in known space. The war was over, but its consequences were just beginning. The end.